evolution of the soul. I'm curious if you all had any questions from last week, because we went over some, pretty detailed information about that. So feel free to pop that in the chat section if you have some questions. Here's our references. I didn't have spiritual power tools on last week, but we're definitely going to be throwing a couple of those in that you'll be familiar with most likely as well. So also, I was looking ahead at the reincarnation and karma sections, and I'm going to have a lot of handouts that I will be offering as part of our exploration. So I just wanted to throw this up here. My website is centerfordynamichealing.com. And if you go to the menu item that says spiritual support and then down to handouts, I'm going to be posting them on this page every week. And this one is from last week, the forms of consciousness chart that we went through. And that's there. I also posted another one-sheet list that Jane Elizabeth Hart had put together that kind of summarizes each of those forms of consciousness on a one-page list. Just for kicks, I put that one up there too. We won't be talking about it tonight because we went through that in such detail last week, but that's on the website as well. So we're finishing up our overview of a soul's journey, where we've been, where are we now, where are we going, and then next week we'll start reincarnation and then karma, and probably 2 or 3 weeks for each of those. That kind of runs into December, when I'm definitely going to be doing 7 steps for releasing 2020 and moving into the year 2021 with kind of a clear internal life, so that we can be open to the new opportunities in the new year. So we'll take a break from our series, regardless of where we're at when December comes around. So just to recap from last week, we have evolved from minuscule consciousness to greater consciousness throughout our incarnations, from our first existence as an individualized expression of the cosmic energy of the universe. We don't go back, we don't backtrack, and we never unlearn what we learn. So we add on to our understanding as we grow, just like we do in school. We don't, go through 6th grade math and then have to repeat 1st grade math because it's already part of our system. There wouldn't be any reason to have to go back to do that. So that's kind of the logic behind this perspective, on soul evolution. Human beings are the most evolved life form on Earth, with the exception of those who have already reached enlightenment. And what does reaching enlightenment mean? It means those people who have transcended their humanhood and they are fully their spiritual self, which is possible, and it's where we're all headed. Every soul has gone through this evolutionary cycle and carries with us, each one of us, carries more history than meets the eye. So, you can look at me, I'm Lynn, I've been Lynn for 50 years, and there's so much more to my history than that. That's just a little part of my soul history, and that's true for each one of us. Our main focus is moving from human consciousness to spiritual consciousness, and that's what we're going to spend the rest of this evolution of the soul reincarnation karma series talking about and working on, because we don't really need to worry about the forms we were before our human lives, because we just evolved through those and we don't really have to think about them. But our human lifetimes start the process of accumulation of karma and a higher level of learning than we were able to do in any other form. So and then our next stage is moving into that 4th dimensional, 4th form spiritual beingness, and that is our primary that's our next step. So that's what we're going to be talking about mostly. So just to again recap from last week, the 4 forms of consciousness: the inanimate, rocks, plants, things that get reacted upon, they don't necessarily react to the world, except maybe a plant reacts to rain and reacts to sun, but otherwise that form of consciousness gets reacted upon by the environment. An animal where we developed our instinct and the beginning of emotion and the beginning of intelligence, but in a very different way than it comes to be part of who we are as humans. Then our human selves where we develop our logic in a different way and our intelligence, and then our spiritual divine self, which is completely intuitive. Not that we don't use our intuition or our emotions, but it's a whole different way. Our intuition, our intellect, and our emotions are used as tools through our understanding, our intuitive understanding of what needs to be done in a given situation. Versus in our human self, we're still trying to figure out, how do I manage my emotions? And how do I learn things? What do I do with my intelligence? How do I solve a problem when I don't have all the information, or I don't have access to the information? But our intuition gives us access, remember, to intuition or information that is beyond our senses. So it's really helpful in being able to use our intelligence in a new way. All right, so the question that I get most when I'm teaching this class is why? Why are we here? Why the cycle of evolution? Why the cycle of reincarnation? Why karma? Why all the suffering? Why? And any book I've read by a spiritual teacher whom I trust say the same thing. They say, because God wanted to experience God's self. The universe wanted to experience that energy, wanted to experience itself. And the only way to do that is to have something to watch, to have something that reflects that universal energy at some point, so we have always had that essence of the divine within us from our very first moment of existence as something separate from that universal energy. We've always had that completion of divinity within us. We just have to grow to be aware of it. What a fun show that would be, right? What a fun show. Like, oh, let me create all these beings and let them have dramas. Like, we are God's Netflix. That's what we are. We are the universe's Netflix. And there is just show after show after show. You think we invented binge watching? We totally did not invent binge watching, because we have the universe binge watching us for eons and eons and eons of time. So one of the ways that Bear Baba says this is, God became man so that man can become God. So it's this process of, gee, I think I'm going to create something so I can see that. We can understand that. Have you ever created something and then just felt so happy with your creation, right? And now, like, yay, here's my creation. So it's the same kind of thing. And it does it explain? Well, we'll get more into the ups and downs and the seeming unfairness and unjust and the violence and all of that when we're looking at karma and understanding the balancing of energy and all of that. But as far as the beginning goes, this is as good an answer as I have ever found anywhere. And it's God, universe created because it could. and it did, so that we can wake up and we can be watched and supported in waking up to our own Godness inside. So, all right. So again, our primary focus is moving from the third form of consciousness, our human self, into the fourth form of consciousness, our spiritual self. Jane Elizabeth and the Center for Enlightenment calls the human form of life, the third dimension, just to define some terms here for us, and the spiritual form, or that fourth form of consciousness, the fourth dimension. So just, so if you hear me calling it the third dimension or fourth dimension, that's because it's in my cells, because I've been hearing that for so long. But just so that there's no confusion about what we just went over last week to what we're talking about moving forward. So moving from the third to the fourth dimension is the next step of our evolution. There's nothing left as far as developing our humanity. I mean, we will hopefully get more compassionate. We will hopefully be more of service, and that's great. But as far as actually evolving our brains, actually evolving as a species, the next step is our spiritual expression. And this is where science is really important, because we're going to be able to measure these things better someday, but they have to be acknowledged that this is actually a thing, and it's not time for that yet. We haven't gotten there yet. We have to acknowledge the existence of the spiritual realm, and science is still on the material side of that line, but they're getting there. It's okay. We can be patient with science. So you will recognize this if you were, oops, went too far. If you were part of our journey through the spiritual power tools, this is the list of the differences between the third dimensional consciousness, our human self, and how we show up in the world, just as a rule of thumb, not as anything bad, or, this is just how humans experience the world, compared with the fourth dimensional consciousness, our spiritual consciousness, just to show the difference between them. So not, in our human expression, we can't turn off our minds very well. Sometimes if we've been practicing meditation for a while, sometimes we can. And again, the purpose of meditation isn't only to turn off the mind, but to be able to learn to listen to what's happening on the inside, to listen to our mind so that we can unravel some of those false beliefs, but also so that we can listen to our intuition and strengthen that as well. So we went through this before, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, and you can access this at cfenlightenment.org, centerforenlightenment.org, as well. So if you have the spiritual power tools, but good for you, you can open it up and find it in the book. But let's look at a little bit more at the fourth dimensional consciousness, because these are the skills. These are the skills that we develop as we're transitioning and moving more into that spiritual self. These are the responsibilities we have to work towards. So you've mastered the art of turning off your mind. Can we do that in a week? Absolutely not. All of these take time. Identify with the unlimited self. We use our intuition first, whereas as humans we're relying more on the intellect, which again, remember, the intellect has access to our senses and to our concepts that we've taken in from the outside. Our intuition is what can access that which is beyond our senses. You can quiet your mind at will, understand happiness exists within you, and it's not really just an understanding, but an experience of, being beyond the opposites, which is the next one, that tear us one direction or the other, that even our happiness is short-lived because it's followed by the end of that thing that was making us happy. So it kind of tears us back and forth. So even that happiness is a little bit fragile. But in our spiritual self, we can see both sides of that. We can see that both are true and both are part of the human experience, but we're in it, but we're not of it. There's an empowerment that comes from that, and we're fully present in the moment. We're in control of our emotions. We live peacefully. We know how to forgive. We know when to take action and what action to take. We welcome the changes because we know that means movement. We're in harmony with ourselves, in alignment with ourselves, and we feel secure and complete within that connection within. And we enjoy silence, and we understand our responsibility to all humanity. You know, when we are aligned within, we're better able to help people around us. And there's a responsibility to do that because we are in this world. The people in our lives are our responsibility to a certain extent, not for their behavior, but for offering them the opportunity to be their best selves, because we're in that space where we are our best self. And so this is what we're moving into, and it sounds wonderful, and it sounds like, oh my gosh, why wouldn't I be doing this? And why, you know, I just want to be able to do this now. But it takes time to develop those. It takes time to work with the subconscious that storage that has been built up for many, many lifetimes. And there's a lot to unravel and that is part of our process too. We don't just suddenly become these super awesome expressions like as listed in this list. We work towards clearing ourselves out, and these are the byproducts of that purification process. So if you are a soul evolutionist, we understand that we have spent many, many lifetimes in the third dimension, our human form, developing our humanhood. And that's we can't bypass that process. It's part of evolution. It's part of learning and growing. And we can't fully understand the universe or the creation and universe if we don't understand ourselves and how to be the best human we possibly can before it's like, okay, now what? You know, gosh, I'm a good person. I've tried to do the right thing. Now what? You know, I'm still not as happy as I feel like I could be. I'm kind of bored with life and the ups and downs of life, not just because of the pandemic, but because, hey, you know, I know how to do things. And that's kind of the sign when we are ready for our more rich spiritual life, because we know that this world isn't satisfying anymore. And it's not depression. It's a kind of a divine discomfort of, okay, there's got to be more to this. There has to be more to this. All right, so the third dimension is ruled by the law of karma. Nothing in human existence is outside that law. I love talking about karma. It's so fun. It is so fun, and it's so infuriating all at the same time. So I look forward to talking to you more about that and getting into details and some examples of how it works, and just so that we understand it better, because all of this is so important. Even if you don't care about enlightenment, if you don't care about moving in your spiritual form, we'll all move into our spiritual form eventually. It is inevitable. If we cooperate with it, it makes the process a little more efficient, but there's no hurry. So even if you don't really care about that, understanding that there's so much more going on behind the scenes than what we see is still very valuable to expressing ourselves in the world however we want to do that, because so many times things don't work or things don't seem fair and we don't know why, and we can hit ourselves against the wall like, what am I doing? Or what am I doing wrong? What are they doing wrong? And it looks like it should be easily fixed, and it's not being easily fixed. But if you can understand that, okay, there's obviously karma here that's acting, and so now I'm already going into that, and now I got myself stuck without talking more about it. So sometimes things are stuck because there's a piece of karma there that's holding it in place that can't be moved by us or anything else. It just has to be played out. And that can be really frustrating if we don't. It can be frustrating if we do understand about karma, but it can be frustrating if we don't understand about karma because it doesn't make sense. But if we can stand back and look at the law that runs our human existence and why it's there and how it works and what we can do to cooperate and flow with it instead of working against it, then it's not so infuriating, you know, and it makes life a little bit lighter to deal with, you know, because then you can go, okay, well, that I'm not going to be able to do anything with that. So let me shift my focus and go this way because this way is clear, but that way, because of karma, is not clear. And so we can shift and move. And I'm sorry if that's not making any sense. It will, I promise, it will. And if not, you can ask questions until you understand it. All right, so moving into the fourth dimensional spiritual consciousness is a long process. And in this process, we learn about our soul history and develop fourth dimensional skills at the same time. So we're working to clear, to awaken to understand, to see at least the past lives that we need to in order to understand our whole selves and who we are today, and clear things out, unforgivenesses that are hundreds of years old, and false beliefs, judgments about ourselves that that we made 500 years ago. I'm just using an arbitrary number here. 500 years ago, that where we felt really bad about something that we had done in another lifetime, and we're carrying that and holding that against us, against ourselves, and it's getting in the way of feeling okay, or it's getting in the way of being able to have a different expression because we told ourselves 500 years ago, I will never do that again. And so we can't do it now because we made this commitment to ourselves that is it's not in stone, but it's an iceberg, right? It's a frozen chunk of our iceberg unconscious storage that is in the way. So part of what we do is we're moving into our spiritual self is we get to see those blocks, and we get to see, oh my gosh, I have to forgive myself from 500 years ago. And it's not myself, Lynn, it's myself as whoever I was in that lifetime that I have to forgive and let go and release that energy and say, no, that's just a recording. I don't have to be stuck in that anymore. That's just a recording. And now I can move forward. But that takes time. It takes time to look at those things and work through them and master that old energy so that it's released and the new energy comes in and teaches us about our fourth dimensional skills. It teaches us about all that list of wonderful things. It teaches us how to let go. It teaches us how to forgive. It teaches us how to use our intuition and all of those things. So that this process happens simultaneously. So that one thing is being dismantled as the new is coming in. It doesn't just like one day we've meditated long enough and we're enlightened, because there's too much to learn. There's a lot of rules, and there's a lot of invisible goings on that we have to know a little bit more about in order to have mastered our humanhood. Because we can only really master our humanhood from that other perspective. So they go hand in hand. We clear a little, and then we master a little, and then we clear a little, and we learn more and master that, and then we clear a little bit more. And so it's this process that goes on until we can flick away that last bit of iceberg and we're fully free. So we have to be patient with ourselves, and we have to know that it will happen, and there are ways that we can cooperate with it. And the step from the third to the fourth dimensional consciousness must be consciously desired and willfully acted upon by each individual who's becoming awake. We talked last week about, the first form of consciousness, second form of consciousness, both get evolved automatically. But once we're human, we don't evolve automatically. We've got the law of reincarnation that brings us back automatically. But when we're making that jump in evolution, we have to be conscious about it. It doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen because we want it. We have to want it and work with the process. All right. So are you a soul evolutionist? Let's look at what evolution is. Evolution, like the main definition of evolution, is to develop by evolutionary processes from a primitive to a more highly organized form. So when you're talking about soul evolution, it's the same concept. It's change, development. Soul evolution is this process that each soul goes through to develop from that lesser to greater awareness of the pure energy that we came from. That pure energy, which is, not neutral. It's very active and benevolent and intelligent. So you might be a soul evolutionist. Just try this on. You might be a soul evolutionist if you know that there's more to life than what you experience with your 5 physical senses, or even if with a little bit of intuitive sense that you may have, or a lot of intuitive sense that you may have, but there's still more. You might be a soul evolutionist if you want to understand why things are happening inside of you and outside. Why is this not fair? What's going on here? How can God let this happen? Or what's going on inside of me? Why did I just react that way when, this person walked in the room and I just had this feeling of disgust? Or this person walked in the room and I just had this feeling of like, oh my gosh, I want to know this person. Why? What's going on inside of me that these different reactions can come forth? So a soul evolutionist is that explorer and warrior that wants to know the truth about things. You might be a soul evolutionist if you want to be or perhaps feel connected to that universal energy and want to develop that connection even more. You might be a soul evolutionist if you believe that you are responsible for taking part in the process of supporting the awakening of your consciousness. There's a part of you that knows, I can't just want to be part of that universal energy. I feel compelled to act and to do something to get it. Like any other kind of goal that we have that we feel passionate about. We do it incites us into action. We want to do something about it. It's important to us. So a soul evolutionist has that, I want to know more and I'm going to do whatever it takes so that I can understand more. What book do I need to read? How long do I need to meditate? I need to know. And there's that drive inside that has always been there. It's the drive inside of us that propels the evolutionary process. Like, I know this is not all who I am. I know I am something more. There's some little tiny conscious part of us inside that remembers where we came from, that pure energy in the first place that drives us. And the more life we have experienced, the stronger that desire gets, because we're waking up. And waking up means waking up to who we are and that place that we started from. So exciting. Okay, so this is from Spiritual Power Tools as well. How do I consciously evolve my soul? So Jane Elizabeth Hart, author of Spiritual Power Tools, lists some basic things that we need to do in order to cooperate with our soul and to wake ourselves up and cooperate with the process. So the first spiritual step is commitment to work with your soul. And again, if you don't care about enlightenment, that is no big deal. Think of your goal. Think of what you want for yourself, expressing your whole self, or being happy in the world, enjoying life, whatever that is, or something more specific like, the perfect job or the perfect relationship, or, whatever perfect means for any of that, right? But, this is what I'm working toward. We have to make a commitment to it. And that's the same is true, because remember, we have to consciously desire and willfully act upon that desire in order to make it happen, right? So commitment to work with your soul starts the process of unfolding your soul awareness. Meditation is essential because it quiets the mind, but it also helps us learn how to listen to that intuitive voice that is inside, that comes through from the inside. We need to observe and manage our emotions, which allows for clear thinking and right action. And this seems like such a simple step, but this is really 3, 4, 5, and 6 are really the workhorse part of this process, because observing and managing our emotions is not as easy as it seems like it would be. And also part of that process is learning the patterns that have followed us and that we have actively reinforced from one lifetime to another, to be able to understand that and go, okay, this is why I behave this way. I've been doing this for 4 lifetimes. I get it. Okay, well, no wonder it's such a tricky little behavior, emotional reaction in me, because it's been around for a long time. So observing and managing our emotions is also about understanding where they come from too. Becoming less dependent on the intellect helps us develop our intuition. We in Spiritual Power Tools, there was the Listening for Guidance chapter with questions of how to develop our guidance. And it starts off with asking, where should I go to the grocery store? What clothes should I wear today? Those kind of things, asking about little things to help practice relying more on that intuitive sense than on what our brain would say, what our mind would say, excuse me. Releasing your desires stops future karma. And we'll talk more about that when we get to karma. But when we desire something, there is a law in the universe. See, here I go. I just can't stop myself, can I? There's a law in the universe that says every desire we have has to be fulfilled. So we can go on and on and on for a gazillion more lifetimes by continuing to desire experiences in life. So releasing some of our desires when we're ready for our spiritual expression helps stop that karma, that karma of desire, so that we're not just building up more things we have to do before we get to that spiritual essence of ourselves. And then forgiveness is the only way to erase past karma and stop future karma with whatever we're trying to forgive. If we don't forgive, we carry that person, place, thing, or situation into our next lifetime with us. And we'll keep doing that until we resolve that. Whether it's the same exact person, place, thing, or situation, or if the next lifetime we just have something that fills in for something similar in order for us to work it through. And then letting go of the ego. And I would say letting go of our human self, because ego gets kind of a bad rap, and ego has been very important on our journey as humans. It's because that's our personality is our vehicle that we use to interact in the world. And so it's not about not having a personality. It's not about not having an identity. It's the human identity, identifying as a human versus learning over time to identify only as our spiritual self. And we will talk more about this too. And that empowers the soul. When we're letting go of our human self, we're empowering that spiritual self to have more room in us to move. So the work of soul evolution includes meditation. Very, very essential. It is the most important thing that we can do for ourselves, is to meditate. Observing our thinking so that we can learn about what that little voice is saying. And there's usually about 50 voices in there. And that's not a clinical diagnosis, that's just being human. And learning to master our emotional reactions. And in the process of doing that, we're also, in order to master our emotional reactions, we need to release our false beliefs about ourselves, about other people, release our fears, work through our fears and let them go and not let them block us from experiencing what's important to experience. And not fears like I have a fear of jumping out of an airplane with a parachute. I'm totally okay with that. I don't think I'm going to have to come back lifetime after lifetime to get rid of that. It's just not something I'm interested in doing. I don't even have a reaction when I say that. It's like, I'm just not going to do it. And I don't really feel like I have to. So anyway, so not that kind of fear, but the fears of, speaking, and not speaking like teaching a class, but just, when a fear of speaking our truth, or a fear of being in an intimate relationship with someone. I'm not talking just romantic relationships. I'm just talking about letting ourselves be our authentic self because we're afraid that somebody might judge us, or we're afraid to let somebody in because we've been hurt in, 10 other lifetimes when we've let somebody close. So now we've built a wall 10 lives thick that is protecting us, but it's not really protecting us. It's in the way of being one with ourselves for sure, but with knowing our oneness with everybody, which is actually also something we experience in the fourth dimension also, which wasn't really clear on that list. So throw that out there. So we release old emotions, all of that old stuff that we've decided, if you think about 500 years ago, if we have indeed evolved in consciousness over time and become more and more aware over time, then 500 years ago, like if we're here in our consciousness, 500 years ago we were here, and that's not very conscious. So we hold ourselves, I just want to check the time so we don't miss our meditation today. We hold ourselves accountable, which is a good thing, but also we can hold anger and unforgiveness towards ourselves for something we did 500 years ago if we think about it today. Because today, I can see that today, from where I stand, I can see that when I was 18 and I took my mom and dad's pickup truck to go see this cute guy I was interested in, instead of staying with my brother, who I was supposed to be babysitting. He was 12 or 13. He was 12, I guess. So he was still old enough to be by himself, but that was not a good move on my part. Anyway, I can see at my age that was not a good idea. But it seemed like a really good idea at the time when I was 18. So that's kind of an example. So if we can see that, hey, I'm conscious now and I can see what the right thing is to do now, that's really a good kid, basically. But when I went outside of the lines, I did a big job. I did it big. So anyway, so we can see that we are conscious now, but we're also carrying a judgments of ourselves from other lifetimes when we weren't so conscious. So it's like, another example would be like a sixth grade kid thinking about their first grade self and just going, oh my gosh, I was so stupid, or, I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't even know how to spell. Oh my gosh. And judging ourselves for not knowing any better. And so part of releasing that is having compassion for our lesser conscious self from other lifetimes. And that's important. That's part of releasing those iceberg chunks and the energy that we've carried with us for so long. And then we think about what that other guy did 500 years ago. And, I am not letting them off the hook because, no, I've learned my lesson 500 years ago. You did me wrong, and I am not forgiving you because I don't trust you. Well, maybe 500 years later, that person has also evolved, and it's okay to let it go. And letting it go may change that relationship in a way that something positive could happen. But if we hold on to that protection, then we're never going to know, right? So lots of good practical reasons to do this work. Again, if you care about enlightenment or not, it just frees up so much. And our work too in our soul evolution is to ask, why is this happening? What's going on with me? Where is this reaction coming from? How do I let it go and help when we are waking up? This is tricky stuff, this karma and all of that, learning about intuition and all of that. And we are never alone in that process. We always will have spiritual backup in that process, whether we're led to the right book to read or the right person to talk to, or, I think I might have shared this when Jane Elizabeth talked with us in, when was that, May, I think. And that's on YouTube if you want to go back and look at that. But when Jane Elizabeth came into my life, I wasn't looking for a spiritual mentor or teacher or anything. I was pretty good. My spirituality was the most important thing to me, and I was working actively towards that, but I didn't know that there was more that I could be learning about. And so I substituted during a class for my boss at the time, who was away, and he was teaching this class that was going to be this 2-week-long intensive class. And so I taught the first night because he was still out of town. And Jane Elizabeth was in that class. And she came up to me after that first class and said, maybe it was at the end. To me, in my mind, it was the first night of class. She came up to me afterwards and she said, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like I want to take you under my wing. And I just don't know why, but I just have this feeling. I just want to take you under my wing. And I thought, oh, this little old lady wants to take me under her wing. That's so sweet. And I just moved to the area and I didn't really know a lot of people. I'm like, yeah, I'm up for that, sure. And then it was shortly after that, probably a couple months later, she invited me to her reincarnation class that she was teaching. And, just everything started unraveling, but also connecting for me too, because it's like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And, so she showed up in my life at a time when my soul knew I was ready for understanding more things, but I didn't know. I was fine. So, we always get the help that we need. And the journey from the third to the fourth dimension is intuitive and experiential. It's not intellectual. So even when we find books that help us understand what we're grappling with on the inside, that's support that will help that experience of what we're working on more real. But we can't, like going through these all these different forms and the charts and everything. That just like feeds my brain. I love that stuff, but it's not going to make us enlightened. It's good to know. It's information that's important to know, but intellectually knowing isn't how we get to the fourth dimension. Ken Wilber said one time, I don't know if you know who he is. He's an author, a spiritual writer. He's written hundreds of books, I'm sure, about all these different spiritual concepts. And I don't really resonate with his stuff so much, but there's some good stuff in there. And he's just written so much. But he said one time, I will never become enlightened because I'm too attached to my thinking. I'm too attached to my intellect. I will never become enlightened. I think that's probably the thing that I most resonated with him about, is that, that understanding that, wow, I really like my mind, and, hopefully I'll be able to let that go a little bit. But what he was saying really emphasized that, he knew that we can't get out of our human selves if we're not willing to let go of our human selves, and that's an intuitive, experiential, filled with what we might say blissful experiences or mystical experiences, but those happen for a reason too. It's not just something gets bestowed. It's we release something and work through something, and something gets freed up, and then that new energy comes in, and that's what feels like the bliss. It's like, but it's a release, it's like getting a massage and having that feeling of release, and it feels, maybe it's work during the massage, and all the toxins have to be released from the body, but then it's like, oh yeah, I'm so glad I did that 3 days ago, because it's worth it today. It's there's a purpose to it, and there's I mean, there's so much logic in this. It's so beautiful. It's seamless, and I know I am way far away from knowing so much more beauty to that logic of the universe, the love and the logic of the universe. It's fun. Anyway, we are absolutely 100% wired for this next step. We have that, the DNA of God, if you will. We have the that essence that is inseparable from that cosmic energy that we came from. It has always been there. It always will be there, and it knows how to see us through this process. We can cooperate with that, but it knows how to see us through this process. And it's inevitable that we all wake up. It's inevitable that we've all been through this process. It's inevitable that we all wake up, and we can do our part with that as well. This Newsweek article or cover was from 2001, I believe, a long time ago, but it's really cool, really cool. All right, so it looks like we have a couple questions. All right, thank you. Got my timekeeper giving me a message here. So, all right, so because I don't want us to lose out on our meditation tonight. So thank you, just in time. So I invite you to relax where you are in your chair or couch or whatever, wherever you are, and just chill out. Hopefully my dog will chill out. He's looking at me like he's hungry. And we're just going to let everything go, all of that intellectual stuff go. We have to know it intellectually, but it's the inner application and experience of it that is what moves us forward. So right now, we're just going to let it all go. All that has filled our thoughts. Take a couple of deep breaths from your belly, breathing in and out. And tonight I'm going to use an image that I just really like. I've shared it before. I just like feeling my heart, picturing it, but also feeling my heart in the center of a satellite dish, receiving, not doing anything else, but just being open, listening. Letting my mind be still as possible. Feeling that openness. Let your attention be on your heart right now. If it helps you to feel that and be present with that, just put your hand over your chest where your heart is to help you ground that feeling, embody that feeling of that heart space, that receptivity. And let your breathing be smooth and natural. Whatever it is that we desire or that we're working on, there's always support there. Always, always, always. So whether it's a challenge with a work situation or a family member or a goal you're working toward, that listening and that inner receptivity will support you with whatever it is that is right in front of you that belongs to you to participate in and to do your part. And think about what it is that stands out to you in your life right now that you would like answers to or support. Just visualize it, hold it in your hand in front of you, imagine it in your hand. And what do I need to know about this? What can I do to support this being fulfilled or resolved? And then let your attention return to that heart space. And let's just take some moments here when I'm not talking and just listen. Listen for those answers. And they don't have to come right now. Our receptivity is about being downloaded during this receptive meditation time. And the answers will come to the surface at just the right time. So just listen. Set your satellite dish on receive. And if your mind wanders, it's okay. Just bring it back to that heart reception and openness, that state of listening. And one of the skills we develop when we want to listen to that intuitive sense is trust. Trust that the answer will come. Trust that it will be the answer that is for our highest good. And trust that we're supported. You can call it God, you can call it angels, you can call it guides. Jane Elizabeth often uses the phrase out-of-body teacher. And often we have more than one. But trust. Trust that that support is there. And in your own way right now, say thank you. Thank you for whatever guidance comes for this project that I have in front of me, working through something or working towards something. Thank you that I have everything within me to accomplish what I want to accomplish with this. I may not know what that looks like right now, but I can know it's there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just that situation that you came up with it before, just see yourself turning it over, letting it float off into the universe, knowing that it's handled, you'll be guided, and listen for your guidance, ask for a sign, listen within, trust your intuitive voice and do what it says. All those will help strengthen it. Now take a deep breath. Feel yourself in your chair, your bottom in your seat. Another deep breath, and open your eyes when you're ready. Thank you all for being here, and I'm so glad. Hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to send any questions. Feel free to, send your thoughts. I will be sending out information on Election Day meditation, and hope to see you all there bright and early on Election Day. And I'll see you next Sunday in the meantime. Have a wonderful week, and I will look forward to seeing you all very soon. Bye-bye for now.